Well, what has been happening in the last 18 months really is a number of departments in government looking at what are the key barriers to the development of shale in the UK, from really the planning side, the environmental permitting side, from the fiscal tax side, and then generally how the licensing regime is appropriate for developers. And what we've seen is a number of sort of piecemeal changes in all of those four areas. But culminating at the end of last year, we saw a sort of roadmap for operators operating in the UK, which sets out in some detail how, if they approach a site, all of these different aspects, from the planning through the permitting, acquisition of land, working with all of these different consultees, should work.
The government's done a lot of work in terms of planning, environmental permitting and also taxation. The reality is now that we need to get the planning guidance, the environmental permitting processes, we need to test them. We need to start putting planning applications in, we need to start applying for permits, etc. And the industry's geared up and ready to do that.
It's absolutely clear that there's a strong political will in the UK to take forward the shale gas sector. Having said that, there are still concerns by some in the industry that it's taking a very long time to get going. Now, personally, I'm quite comfortable with that because I feel it's essential that we get this right. You know, it's more important that we do it slowly, that we get the regulation right, and that we get the dialogue with communities right, because alongside the increase in government support for shale gas, we have seen an increase in the volume, as it were, of some of the protesters, some of the people who have some very legitimate concerns that they want answering. So we need to have a proper dialogue with people who are concerned. We need to have effective regulation, and I'm comfortable that the government are probably going at about the right pace in order to make sure that we don't run before we can walk.
I think energy policy at the moment is rather unclear. Although all political parties say there is a consensus, from those of us who are in the industry, it doesn't feel like a consensus. It feels like there's lots of different tracks and there's uncertainty and so forth. And maybe that will stay until the next general election. I hope not. But I think that where any industry can be helped is if the framework is understood, the parameters are clear, the hoops and the hurdles that you have to pass through, go over and go underneath in order to come out with the right sort of shape of what it is that you're doing, you know, is there, is understood and can be dealt with. If you start to move those hoops and those hurdles, you start to move them around where it looks like what you have as a framework today may not be there tomorrow, that gives uncertainty. So solid, clear framework, real understanding of what the industry has got to do, real understanding of how it has to deal with its environmental issues, its practical issues in its communities, that will be a help.
Government is in a position to take certain policy decisions that can help the development of shale gas. Just a couple of examples. Politicians, although many of them think they're God, are not actually God, and they can't change the geology, but they can change the commerciality of the geology, so they can tweak and adjust the fiscal terms to make exploration and development of shale gas more attractive. That's one example. Another area is that the government needs to spend a lot of basic research and development money looking at low permeability operations, which is one of the reasons it happened in the United States. Now, the problem is that this government doesn't understand that. It doesn't understand that a private company would not fund Isaac Newton to sit under his apple tree and discover gravity, because gravity has no commercial value. In other words, we're talking about the sort of R&D money that private companies wouldn't and shouldn't spend. This should be done by governments. But this government just doesn't accept that argument, nor does the Brussels Commission, which means that it's going to be a long time before the basic scientific, the fundamental scientific research is in place to be able to get the revolution off the ground. And as I say, in the United States, this was a crucial part of the story when the US government in the 1980s poured a lot of money into research and development into low permeability operations.
I don't think it's possible to say that a regulation or a particular regulatory arrangement is completely satisfactory. All you can do is go in the right direction and say what kind of things should a regulator look like, or how should a regulator look like? And those would have to include things like transparency, about genuine independence, genuinely independent monitoring, and importantly, fully resourced and capable of having the capacity, the technical understanding to be a fully functioning regulator, and not one that's under political pressure to make sure that shale gas is allowed to develop by cutting corners.